Does it feel like your money and retirement is in danger? If you are concerned about your long-term wealth preservation, then the fiat dollar is clearly failing you. With prices still elevated, high interest rates, and the mounting national debt, the present and future purchasing power and cost of living of everyday Americans is more and more uncertain. And how can investments in scarce assets like physical gold and digital decentralized technologies like Bitcoin be used to counterbalance this constant erosion of our purchasing power? If you think that you may be falling short of your retirement goals, see the link in the video description to the free inflation and retirement calculator. To shed light on this present economic environment, we will hear from CEO of Shapeshift, Erik Voorhees, economist and investor Keith Weiner, author and economist at George Mason University, Lawrence H. White, and economist, White House advisor, and author Jim Rickards.
I'm not talking about e-gold, I'm not talking about COMEX futures, I'm not talking about GLD, I'm not talking about ETFs, I'm talking about gold. So gold is no one's liability. I think no one's done a better job than the Austrians of pointing that out. It's the only form of money that's not a liability. You say, what's a dollar or a pound sterling? I learned in the first week of law school, if you have a contract, you're supposed to read the contract. Take a dollar bill out of your wallet, or take a pound sterling, and look at what it says. Look at the writing, that's the contract. It says it's a note. It's a Bank of England note, or in the case of US dollars, a Federal Reserve note. Where I went to law school, a note is a liability. Indeed, if you look at the balance sheet of a central bank, the money that they've created is listed on the liability side of the balance sheet.
Regardless, when examining its specific properties as money, most ways fiat is unimpressive. First, it is not scarce. It is systematically created out of thin air, with no limit on supply, nor can supply even be known. Fiat is willed into existence by politicians and banks because printing money enriches the printer at the expense of the public who holds the previously printed money. The phenomenon is known as inflation or currency debasement. Fiat also struggles with durability. Your fiat will only last so long as your bank permits, and even then it slowly loses its value. Your bank can destroy your fiat with the click of a button. Ask a Cypriot. Ask an Argentinian how durable fiat is. With fiat, you are ever dependent on a third party with your wealth. Is that an attribute of money that you find attractive? Some people are comfortable with it because they trust their government, but requiring trust in politicians seems a poor foundation upon which to build a prosperous society.
Gold coins were privately produced before they were monopolized by the state, and even when they were produced by the state, they traded by weight, not by the insignia. People learned not to trust the insignia of the state as certifying the coin. Why did governments then choose to monopolize mints? Well, it goes back to ancient times. You shouldn't expect to find a public welfare reason for it. It wasn't to improve the quality of the coins, and in fact, ancient and medieval mints notoriously debased the coins. No, it was a source of revenue. Call in the coins, remint them with half as much silver in each coin, and you've made a tidy profit for the sovereign. Similar story applies to why governments monopolized the issue of paper currency, not to improve its quality, not because there was any market failure, but because there was a fiscal aspect to it, a revenue potential from it.
These arguments against gold that I shoot down in my book, I may shoot them down, but you still hear them. You hear them from scholars, you hear them. It's not just sort of the everyday citizen is repeating something they may have picked up. I mean, you hear PhDs, you hear prominent public officials, certainly television personalities and others repeating these things. And I say to myself, well, where did they get this? And I know where they got it. They got it from the elites who like the central bank system. And think about it. If you were a PhD from MIT on the board of governors or maybe the chairman of a central bank, why would you have anything good to say about gold? You control the printing press. You control money. Anyone who controls money controls politics, controls culture, controls the world to some extent. So this is a very small club. They're all taught the same thing. They all believe the same thing. And collectively, they control not just the dollar printing press, but all the printing presses in the world. Why on earth would they want to give up that power?
We're physical beings that live in the physical world. There's a time when you need to be able to take your marbles home and not play in the system at all. But that means taking home a physical good. You're a physical creature. You live in a physical home. You need to take something home and say, I'm done. I've gotten final delivery, final payment. This is that I'm holding it. There can be a confusion between the paper banknote that says redeemable for an ounce of gold versus the ounce itself. Think back to a time in the gold standard, call it 1870, whatever, when you had this piece of paper that said, redeemable for the 1 ounce gold coin of the time. So the way this worked is, you deposited gold and you got this piece of paper, and the piece of paper is a receipt that said you can get your gold back, or you can hand the piece of paper to someone else and he can get, it's now his gold, he can get that back. So the paper is a bearer in instrument of some sort, but the paper doesn't have any value other than that it's redeemable for the gold. You go to one of those places, you check your coat, and they give you this paper receipt that says coat number 1234 on it. Nobody would confuse the coat check receipt for a coat. Nobody would think that the coat check receipt could keep you warm when you go outside and it's 15 degrees and the wind is blowing. There isn't that confusion. The difference is that's a paper receipt, nothing more than that. But when it comes to money, that distinction has been like rubbed out, and deliberately so, with government taking so many actions, including propaganda in public schools. And so that's the sort of crux of the issue is with a piece of gold, you own a physical object in your hand.
The famous economist Milton Friedman once said, "Inflation is taxation without legislation." How do you hedge against an ever-depreciating fiat dollar? Sound money. Sound money is built with assets that have scarcity, a long track record of trust and value, and cannot be printed by central banks. If you are ready to start protecting your retirement savings through a tax-deferred gold IRA, see the links to the free guides in the video description. To attend a free gold education webinar held by Augusta Precious Metals, see the link in the video description. Thanks for watching.